Disasters rarely come alone. And history reminds us that catastrophe knows no borders and can strike anywhere, at any time. 25 years after Chernobyl, humanity believed it had learned its lesson. New safety standards, new technologies, new promises. But nature does not follow human rules. On March 11, 2011, a magnitude 9.0 earthquake shakes northeastern Japan. Deep beneath the ocean floor, the earth ruptures, triggering a chain reaction no one can stop. While people are still trying to understand what has happened, a wall of water rises on the horizon. A tsunami, higher than any defense, faster than any warning, stronger than any preparation. And on the coast stands a nuclear power plant that, within minutes, will face the unimaginable. This is the story of a day when nature and technology collided. A day that reminded the world that safety is often just an illusion. A day that changed Japan forever. Fukushima 2011. The day the sea devoured the reactor. It is 2:46 p.m., Japan Standard Time. A normal Friday. People are working, children are in school, trains run with their usual precision. Nothing suggests that deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, something is building, something that will shake the world. Then, without warning, the ground begins to tremble. At first gently, then stronger. Seconds later, an entire region is shaking violently. Buildings sway, windows shatter, power lines snap. Roads split open as if the earth itself is being torn apart. People try to hold on, but the ground beneath them moves like a living creature. Inside the control rooms of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, the first warning systems activate. Monitors flicker, alarms scream, red lights begin to flash. The workers know, this is no ordinary earthquake. This is one of the strongest Japan has ever recorded. The shaking lasts almost 6 minutes, an eternity. 6 minutes in which nature shows its full power. 6 minutes that mark the beginning of a disaster no one expected. When the shaking finally stops, many believe the worst is over. But deep in the ocean, something has already begun to move. Something far more destructive than the quake itself. While the earthquake's echoes still fade, a hidden force begins to spread across the Pacific. The Earth's crust has shifted by several meters, and the sea starts to pull back. Ships sway violently, buoys trigger alarms. Satellites detect sudden changes on the ocean surface. In Japan's monitoring centers, the first seismic data arrives. Authorities know immediately a tsunami is on its way. But no one yet understands how massive it will be. Out on the open ocean, the wave is almost invisible. Just a gentle but unstoppable rise of the water. But as it approaches the coast, its power grows. What began as a subtle movement becomes a wall of water, kilometers wide, several stories high. At Fukushima Daiichi, workers try to assess the situation. Backup systems are running, the reactors have shut down automatically. Early warning messages appear on the screens. Tsunami expected. Height unknown. The men in the control room know. If the wave is higher than the seawall, the plant will be defenseless. Outside, the ocean continues to retreat, exposing the seabed. People along the coast have no idea they are witnessing a moment that will be remembered for generations. Then, minutes after the quake, a dark line appears on the horizon. It grows. It rises. It accelerates. and it is heading straight for the Japanese coastline. The tsunami cannot be stopped. Japan's coastline lies silent as the wave approaches. People film the retreating sea, unaware of what is about to happen. Cars sit abandoned on parking lots, fishing boats rest on the exposed seabed. A moment of eerie calm, before the world erupts. Then the tsunami strikes. A massive wall of water crashes into coastal towns. Homes are swept away like toys, cars drift like leaves in a storm. Streets vanish beneath a violent, churning mass of mud, debris, and seawater. People run for their lives, sirens scream, emergency lines collapse under the flood of calls. The first live images reach television networks. Reporters speak of unimaginable destruction. Helicopters capture entire neighborhoods disappearing beneath the water. Japan realizes in these moments that this is no ordinary tsunami, but one of the strongest the nation has ever faced. At the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, instruments spike into the red. The wave is approaching the facility. Workers watch on monitors as the sea rises above the seawalls. The backup generators are located in the lowest part of the plant, exactly where the water hits first. One thought runs through the minds of the men in the control room. If the generators fail, we lose control of the reactors. Outside, the wave continues to surge forward, unstoppable, unforgiving. And in this moment, the second phase of the disaster begins. The tsunami wave reaches the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The tsunami wave rises above the seawalls and crashes directly into the facility. Seawater floods the lower sections of the plant, including the rooms where the emergency generators are located. The reactor engineers in the control room watch on their monitors as the tsunami wave destroys critical infrastructure. Warning messages appear: emergency power system at risk, water in generator room, cooling pumps unstable. The emergency generators are essential for cooling the reactors. Without these generators, the reactor systems cannot remove the residual heat. The reactor engineers know that every second matters. Then the first emergency generator fails. Moments later, the remaining generators shut down. Control room specialists watch as the indicators for the cooling pumps switch to failure one after another. The entire plant loses its electrical power supply. The reactors are shut down, but the fuel rods continue to produce enormous residual heat. Without cooling, the temperature inside the reactors begins to rise uncontrollably. The nuclear scientists in the control room attempt to activate alternative systems. But the tsunami wave has destroyed the electrical switchgear. Communication systems fail, and the surveillance cameras show only black screens. At this moment, the reactor engineers understand the situation. The nuclear power plant is experiencing a complete loss of power, a station blackout. This is one of the most dangerous scenarios that can occur in a nuclear facility. The disaster has entered a new phase. In the control room of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, the reactor engineers monitor the rapid temperature increase inside the reactor pressure vessels. The cooling pumps have failed, and the reactor systems can no longer remove the residual heat. The temperature of the fuel rods rises with every passing minute. Control room specialists attempt to open the emergency cooling valves. But the tsunami wave has destroyed the electrical switchgear, and the valves no longer respond. The reactor engineers watch as the indicators for the cooling circuit switch to no flow. The nuclear scientists in the control room know that without cooling, the fuel rod cladding begins to overheat. At high temperatures, the zirconium cladding reacts with the steam inside the reactor pressure vessel. This chemical reaction produces large amounts of hydrogen. The reactor engineers recognize the danger immediately. Hydrogen is extremely explosive, especially in confined spaces. Control room specialists attempt to activate the pressure relief systems to vent the hydrogen safely. But without electrical power, the systems cannot operate. The temperature continues to rise. The fuel rods begin to deform. The instruments show values far beyond normal operating limits. The reactor engineers understand that the risk of core damage is increasing rapidly. Communication systems are unstable, and many sensors no longer provide data. The nuclear scientists must make decisions without complete information. The entire facility is in a state of maximum emergency. The disaster has now entered a phase where every minute determines the fate of the reactors. The temperature inside the reactor pressure vessels continues to rise. The reactor engineers in the control room see on the instruments that the pressure inside the reactors is increasing to dangerous levels. The cooling circuits have completely failed, and the reactor systems can no longer remove the residual heat. Control room specialists attempt to manually open the pressure relief valves. But the valves do not respond because the electrical control lines were destroyed by the tsunami wave. The reactor engineers understand that the pressure inside the reactor pressure vessel continues to rise, increasing structural stress. The nuclear scientists analyze the remaining data. Many sensors no longer provide readings because the communication systems are damaged. The scientists must make decisions despite missing critical information. Inside the reactors, the fuel rods begin to lose their cladding. The extreme temperatures cause the metal structures to deform. The reactor engineers know this is a clear sign of developing core damage. At the same time, the amount of hydrogen continues to increase. The hydrogen accumulates in the upper sections of the reactor buildings. Control room specialists know that hydrogen mixed with oxygen forms a highly explosive atmosphere. Authorities outside the plant receive the first reports about the complete power loss and the rising pressure inside the reactors. The government begins establishing evacuation zones around the facility. Residents in nearby towns are instructed to prepare for a possible evacuation. Tension in the control room reaches its peak. The reactor engineers know the situation can escalate at any moment. The disaster has reached a stage where every decision determines the fate of thousands. The reactor engineers in the control room of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant monitor the increasing concentration of hydrogen in the upper sections of the reactor buildings. The instruments show that more hydrogen gas is accumulating in the roof area of the reactor building. Control room specialists know that hydrogen mixed with oxygen forms a highly explosive atmosphere. The nuclear scientists analyze the temperature data from the reactor pressure vessels. Temperatures are far above normal operating limits, and the fuel rods continue to lose their zirconium cladding. The chemical reaction between zirconium and steam continuously produces new hydrogen. The reactor engineers attempt once again to activate the pressure relief systems to vent the hydrogen safely. But the electrical control lines were destroyed by the tsunami wave, and the valves remain closed. Control room specialists see on the monitors that the pressure inside the reactor building continues to rise. At the same time, external inspection teams report structural damage to the buildings. Window frames are deformed, doors no longer open, and the outer walls show the first cracks. The reactor engineers know these damages indicate that an explosion may be imminent. Authorities outside the plant expand the evacuation zone. Residents in nearby towns are instructed to move to safety immediately. The government prepares for a possible release of radioactive material. Tension in the control room continues to rise. The reactor engineers know that a dangerous amount of hydrogen has accumulated inside the reactor building. The nuclear scientists calculate that the hydrogen could ignite at any moment. The disaster has now reached a stage where an explosion appears unavoidable. The reactor engineers know that the escaping steam increases the risk of hydrogen ignition. Then it happens. In the upper section of the reactor building, the accumulated hydrogen ignites. A powerful explosion tears apart the roof of Unit 1. Concrete panels, steel beams, and structural debris are thrown into the air. A large white pressure cloud rises above the nuclear facility. Control room specialists lose all camera feeds from Unit 1. The monitors display only static interference. The reactor engineers immediately understand that the reactor building has suffered severe structural damage. Authorities confirm the explosion and expand the evacuation zone. Residents are instructed to stay indoors and keep windows closed. The government prepares for additional potential explosions. The disaster has now entered a new level of escalation. After the explosion in Unit 1, a large cloud of dust and pressure spreads across the entire facility. The reactor engineers immediately understand that the destruction of Unit 1 increases the risk for the entire plant. Unit 2 and Unit 3 are in a similar condition as Unit 1 before the explosion. Their cooling systems have also failed, and hydrogen is being produced due to overheating fuel rods. The engineers know that hydrogen ignition could occur in both reactor buildings at any moment. External teams report visible structural damage to Unit 2 and Unit 3. The government expands the evacuation zone again and prepares for additional explosions. The situation at the plant becomes increasingly unstable, and any further failure could escalate the disaster. After the explosion in Unit 1, the situation in Unit 2 becomes increasingly unstable. Temperatures continue to rise inside the reactor pressure vessel, and hydrogen begins to accumulate again. Engineers know that Unit 2 could follow the same path as Unit 1 at any moment. While Unit 2 remains critical, Unit 3 reaches its breaking point. The hydrogen inside the upper section of the Unit 3 reactor building ignites. A powerful explosion destroys the roof and large parts of the outer structure. Debris is scattered across the entire facility. Despite the damage, engineers initiate a final, high-risk measure. They begin pumping seawater directly into the reactors to cool the fuel rods. This method permanently destroys the reactors, but it prevents a far greater disaster. After several hours, temperatures slowly decrease, and the situation begins to stabilize. After the explosions in Unit 1 and Unit 3, engineers focus on cooling all reactors with seawater. The seawater gradually lowers the temperatures, reducing the risk of further explosions. Unit 2 remains critical, but its condition slowly stabilizes as well. While the plant struggles to regain control, the world reacts. International experts offer assistance, and global news networks report continuously on the situation in Fukushima. Governments around the world begin reviewing their own nuclear safety standards. Early assessments show that the combination of the earthquake, the tsunami wave, and the total power loss triggered a chain of events that could not be fully controlled. But with the use of seawater, engineers managed to stabilize the reactors and prevent an even greater disaster. In the days after stabilization, response teams begin securing the power plant site. Specialized radiation protection units measure contamination levels around the reactor buildings. Many areas are highly radioactive and can only be entered with full protective suits. Heavy equipment removes debris from the explosions in Unit 1 and Unit 3. Engineers mark damaged structures and establish safe routes for the teams. At the same time, seawater continues to be pumped into the reactors to keep temperatures low. The government sets up checkpoints where vehicles and personnel are screened for radiation. International experts arrive to support Japan with analysis and long-term planning. Slowly, a clearer picture emerges. The reactors are stabilized, but the facility is heavily damaged and will never operate again. The Fukushima disaster permanently changes Japan. Large areas around the power plant remain uninhabitable for years, and entire communities are relocated. Farmland, forests, and coastal regions are tested for radioactive contamination, with many zones remaining closed long-term. The government launches one of the largest decontamination programs in the nation's history. Thousands of workers remove soil, clean buildings, and store contaminated material in specialized containers. At the same time, Japan begins a major shift in its national energy policy. Many nuclear plants are shut down, and the expansion of renewable energy accelerates. The disaster leaves not only physical damage but also a deep social and emotional impact. For many people, Fukushima becomes a symbol of vulnerability and responsibility. The Fukushima disaster changes not only Japan but the entire world. Many countries review their nuclear power plants, introduce new safety standards, or halt planned reactor projects. Some nations even decide to phase out nuclear energy completely. International organizations publish updated guidelines for protection against natural disasters, power failures, and hydrogen explosions. Governments increase investments in renewable energy and develop new emergency strategies for extreme scenarios. Fukushima becomes a global turning point, demonstrating how vulnerable modern technology can be to natural forces. More than a decade after the disaster, Japan continues to live with the legacy of Fukushima. Some towns in the region are inhabited again, while others remain abandoned as silent reminders of the catastrophe. New monitoring stations constantly measure radiation levels, and many areas have undergone extensive decontamination. Residents who returned are rebuilding their daily lives. Schools, shops, and small businesses reopen, though many families never came back. At the same time, the region has become a center for research on radiation protection, disaster preparedness, and renewable energy. Japan lives with Fukushima not by forgetting, but through responsibility, remembrance, and the determination to learn from the disaster. Fukushima remains a chapter that shaped Japan and the world. The disaster revealed how quickly modern technology can reach its limits, and how essential courage, knowledge, and determination become in the darkest moments. People in the region now live between memory and renewal. Some return, others stay away, but all carry the story of that day with them. Fukushima has become a place where loss, responsibility, and hope exist side by side. In the end, one truth remains. Nature is powerful, but humanity can learn, adapt, and grow from its mistakes. Fukushima stands as a reminder of the importance of preparedness, and of every step taken toward a safer future. Today, Fukushima stands for responsibility, for the duty to learn from mistakes, for the understanding that progress only matters when it is safe, and for the hope that even from the darkest days, a new beginning can rise. The story of Fukushima does not end with destruction. It ends with the decision to do better. For Japan, for the world, for the future. Fukushima reminds us how quickly the world can change, and how essential responsibility, knowledge, and unity truly are. The people of the region continue forward, step by step, balancing memory and renewal. If you enjoyed this documentary, support the channel with a subscription and a like. It helps this work continue, and ensures you won't miss future episodes. Thank you for watching, and stay safe.